And welcome again to J122 Critical Skills Communication, Written and Oral Communication, from crime scene to conviction. And we are at the pivotal point. I call week 6 the pivotal point, because after week 6 we start going back down again. So we've gone from 1 up to 6. So now we're going to go down to 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. So that's 5 more weeks. The quarter is moving rapidly, and I always tell students it's good to keep up and keep your assignments coming in. And many of you guys have reached out to me for some particular questions. I'm going to be expecting questions in the next few weeks, actually, because it's going to be kind of a little bit of a delay after this week. Your week 5, I sent back all of you my comments about your field reports, and your field reports are your first step towards completing your final project. In week 8, you will be submitting a draft, which you'll utilize the information from week 5, and then week 10 you'll submit your final report. And so I'm going to make sure that I clarify something about this report, but let's get started. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so here we are with my information, reminding you that our next lecture will take place in week 8, and we'll have 1 more lecture to go, and that will be it. Okay, so now let's take a look at our announcements for the week. Police interrogation. Very, very, very important part of your communication skills in law enforcement, as well as if you're going to go into corrections. But specifically, you'll be using this in law enforcement. So you read Chapter 9 of Interpersonal Communication and parts 4, Section 4, Parts C and D in reported and writing. We're also going to cover your Miranda rights, and we're going to look at this video, Burglary at the Warehouse. It's a little exercise that I enjoy doing with students. So we're going to go into that. And then I want to remind you that your discussion post, where were you last night at 6, and it kind of involves police interrogation, and your initial posts were due Tuesday night, and your reply posts are due Saturday. Finally, you complete the CJ project by making revisions on your field notes. Now, that's not going to really be a graded assignment, you'll see, but I'm letting you know that you'll need to do that. It's not something you turn in, but this is for your own benefit. Also, that you will be graded on the writing skills quiz. Okay, so let's take a look at the course calendar. Here we go. Okay, so again, these are your assignments for the week. And so you see that your writing practice, oh, this is the one that's not graded. I stand corrected. It's an interactive exercise, so it won't be graded. But you want to go through it, and you're going to deal with that today as well. Begin work on the front sheet of your police report, which is based on your field notes. Once again, you're not going to be turning that in. And then next week, you're also going to continue working. And you'll notice that next week, just pointing out to you, your reading assignment, you'll have your discussion post. That's it. So nobody has to call me and say, well, Professor Wright, for week 7, what do we do? Well, I'm giving you a heads up to begin work on this. Some people wait until the 21st. That's up to you. But you can get yourself a head start. And so then your rough draft will be due on the 28th. And so you're gonna see. Now, you're going to use the template, which I'm going to go over and show you, because a lot of people don't get that part. Since we're not going to be getting together again until the week 8, I want to go over a little bit about week 7, just to show you what I'm talking about. So now let's go through the assignments for this week. Take a look at that, and you'll see that it's your writing skills quiz and then your discussion post. That's it. That's all you got for this week. But as I already said to you, you want to start getting ready and take a look at the comments, and just kind of make sure you take another look at the field report information. Make sure that you covered all of the facts, because that's going to be the document that you're going to use to prepare your draft and your final report. Now, let's go back to the lesson content. Okay, we're going to talk about Miranda techniques. We're going to analyze techniques for successful interrogation. We're going to identify various techniques for interrogation and how to apply them. Then, of course, as usual, your grammar, and we've already talked about that. And repeating again, your assignment, reading. We're going to go over your Miranda rights in a minute. We're going to go over the video near the end. Your discussion, and then your writing skills quiz. Your writing skills quiz. And then I remind you again to make revisions to your field notes based on my feedback. This is important, as your final report is based entirely on the details you provide in the field notes. That's why I said go back and take a look at them. Now, before we get into the Miranda rights and the burglary, I want to go to, just for a minute, to show you what you're going to be doing. When it says go ahead and make sure that you take a look at the field notes, then I said start to prepare your cover sheet. Let's go to week 7. This is where people mess up. When you do your draft, you are going to have, let's see, I'm trying to see, is it under assignments? No, no, it's not going to be under assignments, because the only assignment you're going to have then is that. But let's go to lesson content. You got to go to lesson content, and then you're going to scroll down. Keep scrolling down. This is about police interviewing, but you're going to keep scrolling down to CJ practice. Then you're going to get down to the bottom. CJ project. Begin to work on police report. Now, remember, this is when I said you can begin working on the front sheet. Remember, I said this next week, try to make sure you cover all of the facts. The front section of police report, which is based on your field notes, the prepared field notes from the crime scenario from week 5. Now, it is very important that you use this very same template for your draft that's going to be for week 8 and for your final report. And you're going to save it on your hard drive and begin filling in the first section. Now it says, but don't turn it in until the following week, because that's when we get to week 8. You'll see what I'm talking about now. I'm going to open it so you can see what it looks like. Okay, I'm going to enable editing. Okay, let's enable editing. There we go. And so this is your front sheet. You're going to fill in this information right in here. This is your front sheet. Now, okay, good. That's why I'm taking the time to do this. And that's why this particular lecture is very, very, very important to students to get a good understanding. And it all falls into place. And so you're going to fill in this information. Now, I want to tell you all up front, and I know I'm going to get some requests about it, but I'm going to say it up front to everybody to please listen to this archive from week 6. When you do your front sheet, there is some information that is not in the fact pattern. It's okay for you to fill, I want it filled in, but I want it filled in with information as if you were writing a report. Don't fill in information where there's information given in the fact pattern. But there are some things that you can fill in, like, for example, stuff up here, some of the information like departments and stuff like that. Those kind of things. Just fill in some fictitious information. Now, when you get to the victim stuff, you're going to fill in the information that's requested here. And you're going to, put as much information in here that you have. If you don't know something, say it's not known at this time or unknown or something like that. But this is informational. That's why we say fill in, start to fill this in early as possible. Now, keep in mind, there could be a second victim. If there is a second victim, then you do the same thing again, just add a second victim. But it's very important. Now, I'm going to be heavily looking at your victim statements. That's going to be based on the information from your fact pattern that's given in your field notes. Okay? Now, here we go, where people mess up all the time. Suspect number 1. I want the information about the suspect. Now, if you don't know, first of all, it's not uncommon for you not to have a suspect at the time. You know that. You learn that in investigation. You don't always get a suspect from your field report. But what you will want to do is eliminate this section if there's no suspect. And if the suspect's unknown, and I'm going to have you to put it, I'm going to just jump down to where, and this is suspect number 2. If there's no suspect number 1, there should be no suspect number 2. Jumping all the way down to here, where you should put in your conclusion, recommendation, and final disposition, there is no suspect, but the investigation continues. Or if you have a clue on the suspect, write the details in here. Very, 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 very important. Clean your report up, though, by eliminating the suspect 1 and 2. If there are 3 suspects, add 3 suspects. I'm not going to tell you what to do in this, but there is an answer already given in the fact pattern. I do not want you to make up a suspect. I want you to determine that from what you've gathered from your scenario and then incorporate it into your field notes. Okay, so you got that, Sean? Does that make sense? Does that clarify some questions that you might have had? Great. And so anyway, I cannot tell you how many times students they'll leave them blank or they'll put unknown. I don't want that in here. I don't. If it's not, your report will be shorter. Now, let me say this to you. So then we get to this part here. the suspects. We've gotten that out of the way. So now, witnesses. If there's no witness number 2, then just witness number 1. But if there's more than one witness, and I'm not going to answer that for you because it tells you in the fact pattern how many witnesses there are, how potential witnesses. By the way, the victim could be a witness, but you don't have to say them in the witnesses because we already recognize that one of the witnesses would be the victim. And then I had a person one time wrote there was no victim. I said, then that means there's no crime. And so they had to stop and scratch their head and say, you know, you got a point there. I said, I know I got a point there. There's got to be a victim, okay? That's what, otherwise there's no investigation to take place. It's kind of funny, but I've been teaching this class for about the last, 5 quarters or something, so the last 2 years, 2.5 years or something, and I have seen some instances like that. So anyway, you want to fill in the information. Again, your witness statements, you're going to get that information from your fact pattern. And if there's more than one person you talk to, then the criminal charge, you can, for example, the kind of offense that's involved, the possible burglary, robbery, whatever it is, and a statute, you can make up a statute. And you're going to state whether it's a misdemeanor or a felony. And then you got that same thing. So you might not have all 3 of these. But then here, this is another critical part. You're going to put the type of evidence collected. Now, this part here, the chain of custody, is where people lose a whole lot of points. Chain of custody is essential in a criminal case because it provides it protects the integrity of the evidence that's discovered at the scene. Let's say, for example, if you find a cigarette butt, you say where you found that cigarette butt. You're going to place that cigarette butt in a, think about it, makes common sense here. You're going to put that cigarette butt, you're going to handle it not with your hands, but you're going to maybe use tongs or something and put it in a bag and label it and say where you found it, the southwest corner or whatever it is. You don't have to, you won't find all of that in your report, in your facts, but I want to see that. So what I really want to see is that you mark that item and the next item and then the next item so that you have all the evidence. And then I want to know what you did with that evidence. The general rule is you turned it over to either the crime lab or either to someone else. Generally, you take it to the station and you turn it in. Don't make the mistake that Detective Van Adder made. Who is Detective Van Adder? In the O.J. Simpson case, there was a detective, and he testified that he recovered some shoes at the scene of the murder, and that he took those shoes and he put those shoes in the trunk of his car, which, that wasn't totally correct. He could have put them in a container or something and marked them. But here's the key. He put them in his trunk, and then on Monday, this was a weekend, on Monday, he turned them in. So he kept them in his trunk the whole weekend. So now, can you see, and if you saw the testimony, and I saw the actual trial when it happened, I wasn't there, but I saw it on TV like everybody else, and I actually covered it for several radio stations in Chicago and reported on it. And one of the things is that I said is that there was a question about the integrity of those shoes. Could they have been tampered with during that particular time? Because you break the chain of custody from the time you recover them from the scene to the time that you turn them in. There's like a detour, and there should never be a detour. So your chain of custody, you're responsible for making sure that you follow proper procedure of documenting the item, tagging the item, securing the item properly, making sure your fingerprints and all that don't get on there. Sometimes you have to wear gloves to pick up certain things. The point of the matter is that you put them in a bag and you say where you got them from, okay? And that is very important. And I'm going to grade you on that. I'm going to be looking for that in the draft and the final. So it is very, very, very important because that case I told you about, it created some doubt in the jury. They said, well, that's not proper police procedure. It doesn't make sense. How do we know that there was nothing done to change those shoes? Or somebody might have gone in the man's trunk during the weekend. Or the bottom line is that it's not very professional, and you want to look as professional as possible on your reports and with the chain of custody. Officer Mooring, you recovered this item, and it was marked as Exhibit A, and you put it in the bag, and then you turn the whole everything you discovered over to the crime lab on such and such a date and such and such a time, and that's all you have to do. Then the same thing has to happen for the crime lab or whoever has it from there. And all the way, it should lead all the way up to the time that it arrives as an exhibit in the courtroom. You got it? Okay. Just remember, you're not responsible for what happens after you pass it on. But make sure that when you pass it on, you pass it to the proper individuals or place where it should be, okay? So that's going to be very important. So then, we get back to the items that were recovered, and you're going to put if there's serial numbers. Don't tell me there's a serial number on the cigarette, okay? There's no serial number. If you have a gun or an appliance or electronic, you know what I'm talking about. There's going to be a serial number. Value, you may place a value on the amount, but you may not know that. Don't worry about that. Don't even worry about it. So, and then I'm not so concerned about these letters up here. I'm really not, but I'm more concerned about this information down here. So now we've covered the items that were recovered. Then we get to this is the thing that's going to make you or break you. Once you get to the narrative, this is probably 80% of your grade right here. You're going to, and I've already given you an article. Do you remember the article that I sent you early on in the quarter about how to write a report? Good. You want to review that and take a look at that because it's going to explain to you some of the essentials. We have the who, what, when, where, how, and why. And you remember either we've done it or we're going to be doing it. What's the why about? And, it boils down to most instances motive. But the point of the matter is if possible. Now, don't make up something and throw it in there. You can get motive sometimes from you get it from the witnesses, the victim, even sometimes from the suspect, if you have a suspect that you actually had contact with, then you get it. But the who, what, when, where, and why, and how. Now, it should be in chronological order. It should be in the narrative form, not bullet points. Bullet points are good for your outline, but your report doesn't necessarily have to be bullet points. I prefer it not to. What I do want you to do is write it in separate paragraphs. One of the hardest things to do is to look, and I've seen them, reports where the report covers the whole page, and it's one humongous paragraph where it's hard to find, if you want to locate something in there. It's easier to follow and it's easier to read. So I encourage everybody to write it. So your idea, and don't put the subtopics in there. This is the who, and then write it up. The what, when, where, how. Don't write that in there. Don't even allow, don't use those captions. Those are captions to guide you, okay? And if you want to sometimes write that on a separate paper and then transfer it over, use a Word document. You can do it. And that's the main part of your report. I'm going to see if, that's why I said it is so important for you to make sure that you go back and make sure you covered all of the issues from week 5, that you covered all of the scene, the crime scene that you had, because your report is what you're going to use. Now, some people attach their field notes, but I don't want you to do that. I won't penalize you, but don't do that. Don't do that. That's just something you want to do yourself. You do it. But when you turn in your assignment, I don't necessarily need to see that. Okay. So, and this is really where you get your information as far as statements that are read in court, information that's read in court, dates, times, and all those kind of things. What information you obtain from your field investigation. And here, this is what generally is going to be included. Now, listen to this. You need to be in the habit of having your field notes be consistent with what's in your narrative, because if your field notes contain something and you leave it out of your narrative, you could be questioned about that on the stand. Says Officer Mooring, when you wrote your field notes, you wrote X, Y, Z. But when you wrote your report, you put X and Y, and you left Z out. So if X, Y, and Z was important enough for you to include in your field notes, it ought to be important enough to be included in your narrative section. So don't leave your butt hanging out. Don't leave an opening for a nice defense attorney, which I was like a shark. And so you have an advantage of having a person who's, you get it to the point that you understand. It says, I'm going to look for an opening. And you want to try to plug up every possible opening. And you know the best way to do it is accuracy and consistency. Accuracy and consistency. Accuracy and consistency. Accuracy in your grammar, your spelling, and all of those different things. You know, I already talked about earlier on, but I remind students that the reason why we're heavy in grammar in this course is because we want your reports to be grammatically correct. Don't use the letter I in lowercase anywhere. The letter I, all standing by itself, is capitalized. I've seen it happen, and and I've seen situations where defense attorneys would look and says, you wrote this report. Says, in your report, you wrote something about I. A person said I, so and so, and you write that? You wrote that in lowercase. Well, by the time you're going to say, oh, I made a mistake. Oops. Wash your mouth with soap, okay? You want to keep yourself out of using those phrases. But guess what? If, I'm human. I mean, oh, gosh, here we go again. Bam, You see, it's like, it's like a boxer. You might not get a knockout, but you'll get the jabs. And enough jabs equals a knockout. So you have to watch those kind of things. You have to use the right words, if something, you got 50 cents and you write S-E-N-S-E, or you don't write the word correctly. Anyway, you got what I'm saying here. Your grammar is very, very, very important. So then you finally get down to your conclusion. and that's where you're going to make a recommendation. The investigation continues, or something like that, to the effect, and that you're still pursuing the suspect. Maybe you have a lead on the suspect, and there's maybe even the description of the suspect that's given. Do not make that up. It's either going to be in the facts or not. That is not the kind of stuff I want you to make up. Okay, and that's for week 7. Now, and why was I spending time on this? Because next week, when we get to working on this, okay, let me take this out. Okay. Okay, so when you get to working on this, you make sure it's important that you click on this and use this. I can tell you people have turned in these reports and they didn't have the cover sheet, and they just wrote the information out. That's a no-no. We don't want that. Okay, so now let's go back to week 6, which is where we are right now. And let's go back to lesson content. All right. So now let's talk about this Miranda thing. Now, Miranda came out of a famous case, U.S. Miranda versus Arizona. I believe it was 1966. Yep, it is. And it is a case that was so very important. I have some inside information that I'm able to share with students that other professors can't share it because of my experience. And here's what I'm going to say. If you ever read the entire case, which you could find it on Fine Law, or you can Google it and get the actual Miranda versus Arizona citation. Give me 1 second and I will have it for you. But if you go ahead and you take a look at, let's see, here we go. If you go and you type in Miranda versus Arizona, 384 U.S. Let me go to the chat box for a minute here for everyone. If you type in Miranda versus Arizona, and you go to 384 U.S., and the page is 436, and the year was 1966. If you were to, and then so I have that there. So if you were to go into that, you will see the full decision. And what I'm saying to you is, if you look at the full decision, what you're going to discover, and I'm going to get out of that chat. Okay. So what happens is that you're going to see that there were some techniques that were from a book called Interrogation and Confession. Interrogation and Confession was written by a guy by the name of Professor Fred Inbal and a guy by the name of John Reed. Professor Inbal, I was fortunate enough to have him as my law professor in my first year of law school at Northwest University School of Law. Professor Inbal stated to his classes that he felt personally attacked by the United States Supreme Court because the techniques that were utilized in this case to interrogate Miranda and someone else were definitely the reason why the decision of Miranda came out. In other words, they said that these were bad, they were violations of the Constitution, and that it violated the Fourth Amendment, and it was bad. It was bad. So the landmark decision that came out provided for the rights that we're going to recover. And Professor Hinbaugh went to his grave by every time a case came up before the U.S. Supreme Court after Miranda, he submitted a brief on behalf of a national organization of prosecutors encouraging the court to overturn Miranda. Now, I don't know how conservative the court will have to be to overturn Miranda, but, and I think I'm right, I think it was, I'm trying to remember, I think it was a 5-4 decision. My recollection, yeah, it was 5-4, yep. And so when the decision comes out in a 5-4 decision, what that is telling us is that one justice could swing that differently. Now, and I'm pointing this out because at the present time, the U.S. Supreme Court is pretty much consistently have a majority of, quote, liberals and some 4 moderate conservatives. Now, the recent appointment of Gorsuch to replace Anton Scalia, who passed away, restored that 5-4. So before it was 5-3, and so now it's 5-4. Now, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, just a little historical information for you, is the one of the older judges. She is a adamant liberal, and she is probably one of the oldest. In fact, I just discovered from some news media reports that the President of the United States, Donald Trump, visited her to ask her how was her health. I mean, I said, how bold. I said, that's, you know. So checking on her, and she basically was she's a feisty woman. She almost threw him out of her, asked him to please leave her presence, and that her health was very good, and that she's going to increase her she said vitamins or whatever, so she can lengthen her life. So here's the deal. So the point of the matter is that if she ends up retiring or passes away, he gets to pick the Supreme Court justice, and it's probably going to be not a liberal. No, it's not going to be a liberal. It's going to be a conservative, and then the Supreme Court's going to go 5-4 the other way. So what am I saying? I'm saying that a case like Miranda, while it has not been overturned, is possibly being set up to a point where it could be overturned. I'm a political science major before becoming a lawyer, but I always keep the politics involved, and I explain it to my students because it's good information for you to be aware of. It's very important for you to understand how the law swings and what makes it swing. So this is a very tenuous decision if this court changes from that. Of course, though, a Miranda case has to be brought up. Oh, trust me, one will reach there. One will reach there, and there will be some changes. Just like as the law has changed many other things, Brown versus Board of Education, I don't know the name of the case that brought in marriage between a man and a woman as changing to the LGBT community. My point being is that the Supreme Court is really critical and important in our profession as criminal justice workers, and we should keep our eyes and ears open and be knowledgeable about those kinds of things. So having said all of that, let's look at where we are here. So these techniques that I talked about were frequently used by law enforcement officers to obtain confessions or, as it says, to solicit information about an offense. Interrogation is different from an interview because the purpose for interrogation is to gain information about someone who is in custody. Now, listen to me good and hear me well, and I'm going to ask you. In the instance a person is in custody, how do we know that that person is in custody or under arrest? But how do we know that? What is it that we look for that determines whether or not that has taken place, and then Miranda must be given? Can you have an idea what has to take place? Okay. Did I say that before in another class that you were in with me? Because you were in my intro to criminal law. Did I talk about that then? I think I did. I think I did. But yes, that is it. Awesome. You were boom. Criminal procedure. Yeah, I talked about it there. Yeah, J121. Crime in the courtroom, right? That's the one you were in? Yeah, I talked about that then. And that is important. So yes, that is absolutely. I feel good when I have a student that remembers something that I said some time ago, or that shared, or that they discovered from being a part of a class. But yes, that is the critical issue. You're not free to go. And how can you determine that, whether you're free to go? If you are in a place and the police are asking you something, how do you know if you're free to go? One of the ways, one of the simplest ways. You're hitting them all. You're hitting grand slams on me, touchdowns, 3-pointers, absolutely, goals, yes, and that is as simple as that. Now, if they say you cannot, then at that particular point, you're not free to leave, then you are under arrest. Even if the term you're under arrest is not given, it's based on those circumstances. Excellent, very, 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 very good. So the officers who interrogate the suspects at that particular point ensure that the Miranda rights are given and fully understood. Now, the landmark decision requires that individuals understand, not only just hear them, but that they at least respond that they understand. The case states that whenever a person is taken into custody and or deprived of liberty, which, as we've already established here, is a subject to interrogation that is designed to elicit incriminating evidence, then the officers must advise the suspect of their rights. Okay, now, if you are an officer and you come to the scene and that individual has been given their rights by another officer, but you weren't present, but then you want to question them, is it necessary for you to give the rights again? Is it necessary? Kind of a trick question. Okay. Why do you say yes? Why do you say yes? I'm just curious as to why you say yes. It is because since I was not present to have the Miranda warning given. Okay, that's a technique that is probably a good practice. However, the best practice is before you question is determined from what has been already presented to the individual by those who have questioned him were Miranda rights given. And the reason for that is because what you don't want to do is start brandishing the person with the situation. It's almost like you're hitting them. Okay, your rights are this. Now, it may appear as if you're really trying to be protective of the individual, but you're dotting every I and crossing every T. I'd say yes, but there's been some debates. There have been some discussions about it, and some departments say yes, some departments say no. Some prosecutors think that's a good practice, some think it's no. So I guess that the answer that you gave would probably be the answer, yep, it is hard to know. But you discover this as you become a seasoned interrogator. But personally, as a defense attorney, I'll ask the question of an officer, were you present when the Miranda rights were given? And the answer is, and the officer says no. Did you Mirandize them again? And an officer sometimes will start sweating. But if I was an officer on the stand, I'd say, yes, I gave the warnings again. So you weren't wrong, but there's some, it's kind of like, it's a trick situation. What do you do when you're in doubt? When you're in doubt about the rights given, give the rights. That's the deal there. So, but that was a little trick thing I threw at you there, and you came out pretty good with that one. So anyway, here's my point: is that you're going to advise, and it does say, if you notice. Okay, don't sweat it. Don't sweat it. Just do it. If you notice what it says here, it says that then the officer or officers must advise the suspect. So in reading the law and applying the law, you can't overdo it by doing it again, but you can underdo it. Now, and you can ask them, did they understand? If they say, well, I didn't understand it the first time, but then I understand it now, then you start questioning from what you get. And anything that's elicited before that, there might be some problems with it. But anyway, that's just in practice. You'll see how that works. But there's a way to get around that. The rights are, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to talk to an attorney and to have an attorney present and before and during questioning. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed free of charge to represent you before and during questioning if you desire. And usually the question asked after that is, do you understand those rights? At any time during interrogation, that individual may admit or confess to something, invoke their rights, or refuse to make any further statements. You must stop immediately. Are you sure you want to use your Miranda rights? No, absolutely not. Bonk, you hear that loud sound. Bonk. No, you don't do that, because the essence of the whole Miranda warnings is to paint the picture that the individual who makes the statements, valuable confessions and information, is doing it freely, willingly, voluntarily. That's the essence. That's the picture that you want to create. And yelling at somebody those rights, that'll get you messed up. No. Just talk to them. Now, there are two ways that you can do those rights. You can do those rights by what we call and I forget what the nickname for it is, but shoot, I can't think of it. But anyway, there's a method where you can do it from memory, and you can just tell the people tell them their rights. Now, if you do that way, and you do it that way, be prepared to have that question asked of you in court. And could you give those rights again without reading anything? What's going to happen to you probably in that situation? What could possibly happen to you as the officer in that scenario? The question is, if you are asked by the defense attorney who's cross-examining you, did you give those rights from memory? Or the bottom line is that that's what you did. You gave them from memory, and you put them in your report that way. What do you think is going to happen when you're called upon in court to give those rights again in court, in front of the jury, the judge, and all the people there? What could possibly happen? Yep. And you could say it in such a way that it's not exactly what it says. So to rectify that, most departments issue what we call a pre-printed card. And the pre-printed card is the method that most departments train their officers to utilize in issuing Miranda rights. That way you do just what I did a few minutes ago. I know the rights, but I read them, and I read them from this card. So now when you get to court, and you've already written in there that I read the rights to John Doe from the pre-printed card and so forth and so on. And that pre-printed card is available as an exhibit. So then, could you give those rights again? It says, I could, but I don't want to give them from memory. Is there anything that can refresh your memory? Or either basically, do you remember those rights and so forth and so on? The point of the matter is that what that defense attorney is going to be trying to do is get you uncomfortable. But you have to be smart enough to stand on the fact that we use the pre-printed card, and this is the technique that we use. Now what you're doing is you're leaving less of an opening for error and mistake when you read it. Don't be so, people get kind of cute and they get kind of, one of the worst things in the world in a courtroom, and as a defense attorney, I see it. It was like, I got this one now. When they get cocky and arrogant and they got it. They got it. Just when they think they got it, I throw a banana peel in front of them and they slip on it. And then the credibility of that officer is shot. And that's just how it works. So I'm trying to prepare you so that you don't get caught in that scenario. So anyway, at any point in time, if an individual, after you give them Miranda rights, they don't want to question anymore, you have to leave them alone, period. And that's the best technique. So anyway, you could look at the Miranda case, and it gives the basis of the rights in detail in there. Okay. Some have argued that they should be given in a certain order. Well, there is a flow. If you listen to it, usually you don't hear the right to remain silent later, because that's usually the first thing. And then and warn people that if you do say something, we're going to use it in a court of law against you, and then letting you know now you have a Sixth Amendment right to an attorney, and that you understand those things, and that if you can't afford one, then one will be appointed free of charge. The point of the matter is now what you have done is you have given that defendant all the rights that they have, and then if they want to talk after that, then you start to answer them. Now, you don't have to tell them, you don't have to answer any of these questions. You don't have to tell them that. You don't want to do that. You just give them those rights, and when those rights are given, it's implicit that anything you say will be used against you. Now, listen to me good. Make sure, though, that that person that received those rights are receiving them in a language that they understand. If you have a person who is, for example, from Poland, who doesn't speak English, any Slavic country, Hispanic, Mexican, Puerto Rican, or Latin American, anybody who doesn't speak the language, doesn't understand it, and you give it to them in English because that's where you got it. The key is that it's not connecting with them. You can give it to them, but it has to be in a form. And remember what I just said. It has to be so that the suspect understands. And if they don't understand the language, then, you know, that's not it. And the best practice in those situations is to have someone to read those rights in that language. And that pretty much takes care of it there. So, any questions about police interrogation? Okay, so now we're going to finish up, and we're going to make a little bit past 9:30, but the reason is because I want to give you an opportunity to go through this little scenario. Now, this is an interactive video. Have you done this yet? Have you seen this or done this? Have you tried this? Good. Now you will. All right. So it's going to be a little. Let me see if I can get it opened here. So let me get it here. Okay, it's going to take a few minutes. It's a pretty big file, but it's a very interesting exercise, and it takes a few seconds for it to come through. So hang in there. Okay, it should be winding down. Okay, a few seconds. Okay. Let's see if it opens up. Let's see, there it goes again. Sometimes this does some really weird stuff. You go back to it again. Okay, let's try it again. Let's see. Okay, it's doing some weird stuff here. Let's see. Let's see what it's going to do. Let's try it with. Okay, let's try to open it with. It's not doing it. Okay, let's do this. I'm going to do it this way. Let me stop sharing a minute because I want to come back and get this to you. Let me pause it here. Okay, now let's see if it works this time. There we go. Yeah, it's doing it now. So don't hang in there. Okay, let's do the save file. See if it works here. Oh, it's back to that. Let's see if it. This is really irritating. New tab. Okay, wait a minute. Yep. Okay, I'm going to try to. Let's see. Okay, let's try it this way now. Boy, trying to get it through to. Okay. Lesson 6. This is really a good exercise. Let's try it now. See, it's trying to do it now. Now it's back to that again. It's not working. I don't want that. I want it back on. Oh, you know what? Let's do this. I got an idea. Got one more idea. Bear with me here. I'm going to pause the recording. Okay, let's try it now. just going to open it. Yeah, I know. Try opening up an Internet Explorer. There it goes. See? I don't quit. I do not quit. Okay. All right. Interviewing the suspect, your name is Chris Patrick, and you share an apartment with Keith Remy. Early Saturday morning, you are awakened by a phone call. Normally, your roommate Keith would have answered the phone, but the door to his bedroom is open, or doesn't see them. You had to answer the phone. So,
hello, this is Officer Randall with the Bloomingdale Police Department. Is this Chris Patrick?
And the answer is, see, it depends how you start out here. It says the officer's calling, so he'll say yes.
Yes. Your roommate Keith Rennie was arrested last night for burglarizing a building. We would like for you to come down to the police station because there are some things we want to talk to you about.
So then your choice is, okay, I'll be in an order, or maybe I should have a lawyer with me. I'll be there, but anyway, in an hour. That's what he's saying here. So at this point, there is no suspect. There's no suspicion. He's just calling to ask him something. So he says,
okay, I can be there in an hour. Thank you for coming in, Chris. As I said on the phone, your roommate Keith was arrested last night for burglary. Were you with Keith last night? We went bowling after dinner, and then we walked back to our apartment. Were you drinking last night?
Now, your choices here would depend. Now, you imagine, he's asking, were you drinking? No, not really, just a beer or two while bowling, or yeah, probably 5 or 6 beers each. So your thoughts as the officer is, oh yeah, way too much. So probably the best answer for him to give is,
yeah, probably 5 or 6 beers each. Keith told us you had a lot to drink last night. What did you and Keith do after you got back home? We talked for a while and watched TV. Later I went to bed. What did you talk about? We talked about that warehouse next door to our apartment building. We were curious about what was in there since we've never seen anyone going in or out. Did you talk about how a person might get into the warehouse? Keith mentioned an air duct on the side of the building. Do you know where Keith was arrested?
So now, remember, up here are the thoughts of him, you the officer, said that they were probably at the warehouse. So his choice is probably, he could say, I don't know, or he could say probably at that warehouse next to the building. So then he's lined up with his thoughts.
Probably that warehouse next door to our building. He was arrested at the warehouse on Portland Avenue next to where you live. Were you with him? No, I went to bed about 10:30. Is there anyone that can verify that? Yes, Keith was home when I went to bed. Anyone else?
Okay, so now he's still cooperating. Anyone else? So he could say, no, maybe I should have a lawyer. Now, if he gets to that particular point, then he's reaching a point where he feels like he's becoming a suspect. But let's assume he said no.
No. You're not under arrest, Chris. Just a couple more questions and then we will be done. Do you or Keith go to school? Keith doesn't, but I go to Dale Community College. We found a sweatshirt on the floor of the warehouse community college. Do you have a sweatshirt like that?
No, he just said he went to Dale College. Which answer would you think would probably be the one that's best for him to give now, than not to look crazy? The first one or the second one? This one or this one? This one? Which one would you think? Yes.
Yes, a great one. So you have no alibi for the time. You confess that you discussed breaking into the warehouse. Your clothing was found inside the warehouse, but you claim you were at home sleeping. Doesn't that sound suspicious to you?
Now, at this particular point, what would you do if you were this young man? Would you say nothing, or would you say, even if it sounds suspicious, I wasn't there and I didn't do anything wrong? So the officer thinks it's suspicious. So what if you were him, if you were this, if I was him, I would say nothing. Okay, I agree with you, and here's what's going to happen.
Here's the situation. This morning, Keith told us that you were there with him in the warehouse last night, but then you left before the police officers arrived.
Now, the officer's saying either Keith is lying or this cop is lying. And you know that's not. So anyway, again, I talked with Keith about the warehouse, but I didn't go in with him. So at this point, I think since you said nothing, you got to stay with that.
Whether or not you were actually in the warehouse, you were part of the plan. That means you confessed to conspiracy to commit a felony. I'm willing to believe that you weren't in the warehouse. So if you agree to sign a confession that you helped plan the break-in, I'll make sure you just get probation and not a single night in jail. That's the best I can offer you. Otherwise, we charge you with burglary based on your lies and the evidence.
Now, how does this happen? If I go to jail, I'll lose my job and probably my car. Okay. Now, at this point, he's got either I'll confess to planning, but I never went near the warehouse. So he's kind of painted himself into a corner by not saying anything. You see what he did? Yeah. Confess at this point. So, okay.
I'll confess to planning, but I never went near the warehouse.
See, it says you have the right to remain silent. That's when you give the Miranda rights. And next time, say less. And when you do talk, tell the truth. Also, don't believe everything you are told during a police interview. This is for the individual. Then you can try to interview again. When you succeed, you get to be the interviewer. So, so the point of the matter is that you reach the point now where you've gone through this. You can go back through it again. But you begin to see the point that now the person is under arrest, because and then they give them the Miranda warnings. You got it? You see that, how that worked? Yeah, and you could go through it again. You could do it again. You could try it again, and you could start all over, answer the phone, and get different things. And then you go through it until you reach the point where you become the interviewer itself. And then bottom line is that you begin to see how, depending on how the individual answers questions and those kind of things. Because at this point, you were the person who was being questioned. But if you were the interviewer, the key thing that you're doing is you're pointing out enough evidence that is already labeled. Soon as he admitted he went to that school and that shirt was found in there, chances are he's like new mown grass, but he hasn't realized that. And so the point of the matter is that at that point in time, You can't, that's not enough evidence, though, just to find it. But when you present, now listen to me. Making the deal to that individual in that situation where, depending on what he does, if he decides to accept the deal, then bam, give him Miranda rights from that particular point. If he says no, then you continue asking questions because he's still free. But as soon as you get to the point where, okay, dude, you're down here, you came down here really involuntarily, but now you are a suspect. Now remember this. At the beginning, the way that the questions were formulated, just reminding
Hello, this is Officer Randall with the Bloomingdale Police Department. Is this Chris Patrick?
You know, so then, yes, he's going to say no, or why do you want to know? Let me show you something here. Now, let's go through this. Let me show you this.
Why do you want to know?
Your roommate, Keith Rennie, was arrested last night for burglarizing a building. We would like for you to come down to the police station because there are some things we want to talk to you about.
Now, okay, I'll be there in an hour. That means that that person is coming in at that point. Maybe I should have a lawyer with me. I'll be there in an hour. So now the roommate was arrested, and we'd like you to come down because there are some things we want to talk to you about. Now, at that particular point, the question is still, is this person considered a suspect? In the mind of the person who's asking the questions, but it hasn't been posited in such a way. So if you go back again, and I'm going to flip it just to show you something here.
Maybe I should have a lawyer with me. I'll be there in an hour.
Thank you for coming in, Chris. As I said on the phone, your roommate Keith was arrested last night for burglary. Were you with Keith last night?
We went bowling after dinner, and then we walked back to our apartment.
Were you drinking last night?
Okay, now remember he has a lawyer, but remember, before he said probably, so okay, let's say just a beer.
Not really, just a beer or two while bowling.
Keith told us you had a locked drink last night. What did you and Keith do after you got back home?
We talked for a while and watched TV. Later I went to bed.
What did you talk about?
We talked about that warehouse next door to our apartment building. We were curious about what was in there since we've never seen anyone going in or out.
Did you talk about how a person might get into the warehouse?
Keith mentioned an air duct on the side of the building.
Do you know where Keith was arrested?
And he'd say, okay, he'll probably be at the warehouse, but, he could say, I don't know.
I don't know.
He was arrested at the warehouse on Portland Avenue next to where you live. Were you with him?
No, I went to bed about 10:30.
Is there anyone that can verify that?
Yes, Keith was home when I went to bed.
Anyone else?
No. The answer is no. Maybe I should have a lawyer. But okay, I'm going to just do this one.
No, maybe I should have a lawyer.
See, so now that answer here, it says you're under arrest. Because now he's being evasive. Anything you say, how did you get arrested? Something to do. Next time you say less. And when you do tell the truth, also don't believe anything you are told during a police interview. Try to interview again. Should you succeed, you will be the interviewer. So the key thing here is that you could go on and on and on with this. But what you're going to see almost in all these instances is that this guy probably shouldn't be talking to the police at all and shouldn't believe anything that the police officer is saying. So at the beginning, what he should be doing when he answers the phone.
Hello, this is Officer Randall with the Bloomingdale Police Department. Is this Chris Patrick?
Yeah. Yes. Why do you want to know?
Why do you want to know?
And so
your roommate Keith Rennie was arrested last night for burglarizing a building. We would like for you to come down to the police station because there are some things we want to talk to you about.
Maybe I should be
Maybe
there.
I should have a lawyer with me. I'll be there in an hour.
Thank you for coming in, Chris. As I said on the phone, your roommate Keith was arrested last night for burglary. Were you with Keith last night?
We went bowling after dinner, and then we walked back to our apartment.
Were you drinking last night?
You know, he's once he starts talking, it says, oh yeah, way too much. Not really just a beer or two. Or he say, yeah, probably 5 or 6 beers. So now what he's going to do then is make it seem like he's not even, able to do anything.
Yeah, probably 5 or 6 beers each.
Keith told us you had a lot to drink last night. What did you and Keith do after you got back home?
We talked for a while and watched TV. Later I went to bed.
What did you talk about?
We talked about that warehouse next door to our apartment building. We were curious about what was in there since we've never seen anyone going in or out.
So now
did you talk about how a person might get into the warehouse?
Keith mentioned an air duct on the side of the building.
Do you know where Keith was arrested?
Okay, doesn't matter what he does. He's already talked too much. He's already given too much information. He's already, you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of a client that I had one time, and he was this guy was dealing drugs out of the church to pay to feed the hungry, and so I was preparing a defense for him, and I knew he was going to be on the stand, and I explained to him when he got on the stand, do not try to explain anything to them. And they're going to ask him questions. I prepared him by saying, as soon as you start talking about the scales and all of that kind of stuff, then you're showing knowledge. And when you start to show the knowledge, and what you're really doing is you're being reeled in. Well, that's what this kid did. So now he's kind of like, I'm in trouble now. But so he could still say, I don't know.
I don't know.
You know.
He was arrested at the warehouse on Portland Avenue next to where you live. Were you with him?
No, I went to bed about 10:30.
Is there anyone that can verify that?
Yes, Keith was home when I went to bed.
Anyone else?
No, but maybe I should have a lawyer.
No, maybe I should have a lawyer.
You're not under arrest, Chris. Just a couple more questions and then we will be done. Do you or Keith go to school?
Keith doesn't, but I go to Dale Community College.
We found a sweatshirt on the floor of the warehouse that says Dale Community College. Do you have a sweatshirt like that?
He's new mown grass right now. If he says, I don't know, what color was the sweatshirt? Yeah. But yeah, he says, yeah, I got a gray one. So here's the point.
Yes, a gray one.
There he goes again. You have a right to remain silent. So what he did, he's incriminating himself. So what is the deal? It goes back to saying anything you say, and how did you get arrested or something like that, next time you say less. And when you do talk, tell the truth. Also, don't believe anything, everything you were told during a police interview. Try to do again. When you succeed, you get to be the interviewer. The point of the matter is that as soon as he decides to cooperate, he's in trouble. You see my point? Yeah. So that's the essence of that exercise. So I'm going to stop sharing. I think that was very, very valuable exercise to go through. All the steps I had to go through to get it. But you know what? I'm one of those people. I don't stop till I get whatever I get. So, and that's just me. So any questions? No questions. Well, thanks again, Sean. We went a little longer, but we had some technical difficulties. But I think that anyone who looks at this, they'll begin to see in real action, and that's why this video is really, this little scenario is really neat, because it gives you an exercise, and it shows you how you get to from a person being just questioned to becoming a suspect. And to be honest with you, when I was a defense attorney, I used to always tell my clients and their people, I says, don't talk to the police. Always have an attorney from the very beginning, and then don't talk to them at all. Don't answer their questions. You know, bring your attorney with you. And because once you start doing it, these people, they see, and he was asking questions he already knew. He didn't know, the young man didn't know that the officer already was aware of the sweatshirt that was found in there. As soon as he admitted that he went to that school and that his friend did not, then that puts the blame toward him as being there with him. When he said he did have some discussions with him about it, it's like, man, you know, you feel like a fish. You're just reeling them in, until finally you just give them Miranda warnings, and from that particular point. And so that's the deal there. And then you can seek to get a confession, because he already know you're in trouble. So now you give them Miranda warning, and then from that particular point. Now he could become silent if he wants to before that, after that, but you know, it'll still come back on him with the evidence that already has been brought to him. So, any questions? Any more? I think that's it. All right, well, I'm going to say good night to you, and thanks again for coming out. I hope that going over that scenario for next week and what I clarified with you should definitely give you exactly what you need to provide a good draft. So that's the next thing I'm going to see in the weekend. Okay, great. Well, I'm going to say good night, and you have a good evening. Thanks for hanging out with me tonight.